Ndị be anyị ekenekwanụ m unu ọzọ n'ụbọchị uhuruchi nke taa ka unu si wee na-esoro anyị n'ilu akwụkwọ n'ife anyị na-eme na Eastern News 24. A sị na ndị Igbo n'ụbọchị nke taa dịrị na anyị na mma. A sị na ya dịka echi na echi ada agwụ agwụ, esikwa ndụ mmiri ndụ azụ mmiri atara m azụ anwụra. Dịka o si dị na anyị n'ilu akwụkwọ unu na-afụ onye na-afụ n'ilu akwụkwọ unu ma onye na-ekwu maka ya. Ewere ife o were ego anyị dị oke mkpa maka ekwere unu nkwa na a ga na-etinyere unu update n'elu akwụkwọ bụ gbasara maka Maazị Nnamdi Kanu, anụ gbasara maka nnwere onwe ndị Igbo na-azọ, anụ gbasara maka ife na-eme n'obodo a. Ọ bụ ife anyị kwere unu na nkwa na a ga na-etinyere unu. Ị ga-esi ebe ife anyị ji maka ya wee bịa n'uhuruchi nke tata kabalụ ịdrọpụra your own comment, your own contribution gbasara maka ife iche n'ihe ndị a niile ekwugasị n'elu akwụkwọ gbasara maka nnwere onwe and gbasara maka ife na-eme n'obodo a, and also gbasara maka ọdịm na mma ndị Igbo. Ọ gwara nkwa ha m n'ọnụ gị bụ onye ọma na-ege ntị, ngwa gịa na ya bụ ife unu ga-esi na drọpụra ife nchere. All right, over to you.
Opposition parties, the PDP and Labour, are mired in internecine squabbles. Will the mood, the vibe and the energy of this proposed mega party be different from the disaster of infighting that we're seeing in the Labour Party and the PDP as we watch them inciting themselves against themselves? Who will be the leaders of this new super party, and what sort of dark linkages will they have to the years of bad governance that we've seen in this country? Because before the leaders of this country stole the future and things got incredibly perilous, there was a time in the 60s and 70s that Nigerians felt confident in their future. The people were getting wealthier, a bit like watching your house increase in value every day. There was a lot of money floating around, and people who had interesting ideas could get them off the ground. And Nigerians were able to indulge their desires. On a salary of 3,000 naira a month, the equivalent at the time of $3,000, a family of four could take a holiday to Europe once a year and could afford 2 cars. But by the 80s, all that had become fantasy land. The value of the naira had plummeted, the money seemed to run out, and everybody was forced to tighten their belts. Life suddenly stopped being good, and it's been downhill ever since. What went so wrong in Nigeria? Why did that rise of the 60s and 70s ultimately fall? And can this proposed mega merger of opposition parties help Nigerians recreate that era of meteoric economic growth? How can its proponents convince the Nigerian people that they are not once again trying to steal their future? Well, Professor Pat Utomi is a well-known, well-respected professor of political economy, political historian, and former presidential candidate. He's been overseeing this growing courtship between the opposition parties, and he seems hugely enthusiastic about it. And Professor Pat Utomi joins me now in the studio. Prof, thank you very much indeed for joining.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I know you've been traveling, so we appreciate your taking the time to be with us. Let's look back before we look forward. You are a political historian. How did that confident vision of the future that was prevalent in the 60s and 70s fail? I mean, how could such a time of great promise and prosperity fail so spectacularly?
Spectacularly is the word, and you are on the money when you talk about stealing the future. Nigeria's future was destroyed by the Nigerian political class, no question. And why did it come to happen that way? A variety of reasons, but a simple intro to this would, I think, come from a seminar, lecture about a couple of days ago to mark the passing of Emeka Obasi, the memorial lecture of Kayode Fayemi, who was governor of Ekiti State, was keynote speaker and all of that. And a pretty good question was asked of him by Eniola Bello of this day, and you guys have preached these things, you've talked about these things, you've gone into government and nothing happened, and in a very, profound way, probably didn't realize he was saying that. He was saying, politicians cannot save you in Nigeria. A political party cannot save you. Citizens have to take back their country. That is the truth of the matter. Now, there was something I thought he had in mind, but obviously it would be too theoretical to, put it that way there. But immediately reminded me of a great Nigerian political scientist called Peter Ekpa, who back in 1975 wrote a seminal essay, Colonialism and the Two Publics. And he makes the point about how in Western societies, for example, you essentially have one public, and there's a morality that goes with that public, and people act with that morality. You can't steal public money and get away. There is accountability. There's this, and citizens rise to ensure that that does not happen. But he argues that with colonialism, there was a bifurcation, if you will, of the publics, and then you have what is now the parochial culture, where a man from your village touches 100 naira from the village association thing. He gets ostracized, all kinds of things happen, and so he would not dare do that. But the same man goes to Abuja, no man's land. And somebody, when I was talking about it somewhere today, brought up Gareth Hardin and the tragedy of the commons. That which belongs to all belongs to none. And so this same guy just goes, in it like a drunken, sailor, tearing away at the public purse. And so Nigerian political parties have been built on that culture. In fact, compounded, if I might just begin one more second to talk political theory, by a phenomenon that happened with the convergence of soldiers and oil, which my friend Richard Joseph describes very well in his book on prebendal politics in Nigeria. So everybody is scrambling for a share of this cake. Politicians forgot the mission of politics, which is to use creativity to make the next generation better than this generation.
But when did that happen?
Yeah.
Because, you talk about the supply of easy money, which was diverted on an unprecedented scale away from development into private pockets. But Nigeria had borrowed a lot of money and still had to pay back huge amounts of money that had been borrowed. And is that what precipitated this downward spiral?
It created a culture. And this is what? Culture is everything. Values shape human progress. When this dangerous alchemy, like I call it, of soldiers and oil took place, you had soldiers in power. They'd managed to create what is essentially a command structure, not when the regions could oppose the center and all of that, but now the general at the top appointed vassals who were colonels to run the, and so nobody questioned anything. Jump, how high, sir? And then oil revenues surged in. They didn't need to collect taxes from the citizens who could then hold them accountable. What did you use my tax money for? And they just went. After a while, you couldn't tell the difference between the state's purse and the personal. And the mindset of the people in public life actually was shaped by that. Politicians stopped working for, living for, or being around for the people. They were about themselves. This is why no political party in Nigeria, as we know it today, can bring progress to the Nigerian people. They're in business for themselves. State capture has come full. I'm frightened. I sat on South African company boards, and there was a time there was this, the only thing that South African boards were talking about, even the private sector, state capture, state capture. The Zondo Commission was set up to deal with that. The Guptas became Nigeria. Everything is state capture. They've captured the judiciary. They've captured INEC. They've captured, what have they not captured?
And they stopped investing in the people as well.
No, the people don't even matter in the thinking of most Nigerian politicians. Not that they hate the people. Their mindset is just so framed that they can't think of the people. The simplest example, you see, so much pain. People are suffering. Hunger is in the land. And the politicians don't mind spending half of the treasury to buy themselves cars and stuff like that. So the morality of the state, the point that Peter Ekpa makes, does not exist even for the people to tell them, what are you doing? And then time Then chop go. God will deal with them.
Yeah.
That's the way the average Nigerian.
They've ceded that power to the heavens.
Absolutely. So we are in a tragedy. And to rebuild this will take new kind of thinking.
But it's interesting that I mean, as you talk about them ceding that power to, God and all the rest of it, at the same time, their taste for materialism and consumerism continues to grow. So they're sucked into that world of the politicians as well, the greed, the criminality, the get-rich-quick schemes.
That's why you need leaders. Leaders save the people from themselves. They show the way. But what is the basis for leadership? I mean, if you take, typically, if you say take Judeo-Christian tradition of leadership, you see the servant leader. You see the steward leader. You see the shepherd leader. In all of this, leadership entails sacrifice. The shepherd that will lay down his life for his flock. The servant that, gives service first to the master. The steward who will not eat until the master has eaten. Nigerian politician
and the philosopher king who has a sense of morality.
Yes. In Nigerian politics, it is an obtuse sense of what that represents. So the Nigerian political class is unable, cannot deliver progress. I'm so certain about this. I've engaged with them. I've researched this. So when Kayode Fayomi says the politician and political parties as we know them cannot save Nigeria, it must be a people's movement. It comes back to the point that I've been trying to make, that first of all, to liberate Nigeria, you have to create a new tribe of Nigerians that actually have a new morality. It is from this new tribe with a new morality that you can find the kind of people who can move into the new kind of political party structure. So when I hear mergers, mega parties, these are interpretations of what I've been talking about, but it begins with creating a brand new form.
Well, I'm going to come to that in a minute because that's a crucial point you're making there. But it's interesting, though, isn't it, Prof, that in the midst of what seems to be an apocalyptic era, there are things that have been made by Nigerians. I mean, they've invented a whole new global musical dialect, for example, that we now call Afrobeats. And everybody listens to it today, and it now informs the entertainment lives of millions of people worldwide.
This is to make the point that Nigeria is an enormously endowed country. Talents abound all over the place, but their talents have been prevented from actualization by the political class. What happens is that in some places, the people, in spite of the leadership, in spite of the politicians, break out and produce something. Look, let's take Nollywood. I was around in the very early days of Nollywood. Actually, I was in the States on a visit, and somebody plays me Living in Bondage. I said, whew. I come back, and I know that these guys don't understand business and that it could just become a fun thing. I pull a few of them together and say, look, come. I know you can't afford Lagos Business School fees. I'll do a free seminar on Saturdays for you guys to understand the business part of this. Those early days of Nollywood, that's how, as they came up.
That's a very interesting piece of information there.
Yeah, people like Chris Obirapo keep saying to me, look, we want to give back for what you've done. If you can, find a fund and we can make films, make a fund not for us to be given, but we can borrow from, produce edifying, if you will, stories that will make people realize what it takes to build. And so people must see themselves as builders if we're going to have a nation grow. Again, this whole thing about sacrifice and development, where politicians think that they are masters, they don't understand. There is benefit to public life.
Absolutely.
But that benefit is immortality.
So there is no doubt that Nigerians are both survivors and innovators, capable of creating new ways to make it through dark times, if you like. But I guess the challenge is to be able to predict and then plan and shape what they're going to do. That's what you were talking about, leadership.
Absolutely.
So that they can define Nigeria's future. And if it's going to happen, it'll almost certainly be the young people
Absolutely.
who are going to pull Nigeria through this apocalypse. How does that ineluctable fact fit into the vision of this new mega party that you are overseeing its formation?
And see how the track is traveling. My first port of call is to create this new tribe. And the new tribe is not a political party. It is a movement focused on values. That values shape human progress. In this, we understand, hey, look, these politicians set us against one another by talking this nonsense about ethnicity, religion, and all of that. Nobody has become richer because of the ethnic group he comes from. Nobody has had a better life because of the religion he comes from. So they use it. And in this age, it's very easy to play propaganda politics and put people against one another. In the end, everybody loses. We play a zero-sum game. So let's, in this new tribe, accept certain fundamental values, the dignity of the human solidarity, and work ethic, all of those things. As people begin to walk their talk and live in this domain, then you can say to these people, the only way that you can change the world is through a political party. And so we have an initiative to then say, here is a political platform in development that's values driven, that has to have an ideology, that has to have goals that people can be held accountable for, strategy. All of this must be in place, tested before the people.
But isn't that a long process, though?
It can happen fairly more quickly than people realize. Look at what happened in Senegal. It can become more challenging, depending on how the young folk in Senegal manage it. However, the people are so fed up to here with the political class in Nigeria. I mean, somebody gave me an analysis and said Nigeria will be in popular insurrection within the next 4 months, the way things are going. Somebody sent me this analysis from Nigeria just 2 weeks ago. And I'm saying to myself, we've got to stop our country.
So let me be clear on what is going on, because everything we've read so far suggests that you're trying to bring the existing parties together into a mega merger.
Much more than that. I'm saying that we cannot exclude people because they were, if you read some of my comments, I said, we're creating cohorts. And one of the cohorts I call the mea culpa cohort. These are guys who know that what they did was not what's best for the Nigerian people. They regret it, they don't know how to deal with it because of the nature of the politics. To survive, they keep playing those funny games. They've come to that realization. Let's call them the mea culpa cohort. Then we have the cohorts that deal with a new set of values for politics. And we have the cohorts that deal with actually building a political party framework that delivers on the kinds of, because we parties are structured around the world. This is a party plank, this is where we're going, this is this. And then these cohorts will have a harmonization. Not that, I used to be leader, this, I was vice this, I was governor this, I'm coming in to lead. None of that stuff. You have to first accept the values. And then you get a role.
Well, that gets rid of most people in the PDP and the Labour Party.
Well, as mea culpa people, they can have great roles in birthing a new Nigeria for their children. Let's not forget that these are human beings. And they know Nigeria is a failure as a country. And that their children are about to live in a failed state.
But are people responding to this thing that you're saying?
Yes.
I mean, I'm talking about the politicians.
Oh, yeah. I shouldn't be mentioning names for strategy reasons, but we have if you want to call that, a cohort within the Senate, existing senators, significant number of them, who I am in communication with, who say, that's where to go. And so their cohort and the different ones will find a process of then fusing everybody. That's why you can use merger, but it's not like these 5 governors leave PDP and carry all the worms in PDP to what? By the way, bear in mind that I was involved in almost all of these efforts. I saw them come, I saw them destroy. I mean, I know what I gave to the founding of the APC. I knew where I found that the challenge was coming from. And then I resigned myself at the point where even if what they can do is stop corruption, then we can take it to the next step. Turned out to be the most corrupt government in Nigerian history.
You must be a very disappointed man.
Are you kidding? I sometimes, I was pretty close to like, okay, look, big man upstairs, you know, I've tried my best. It's time to go. You know, and...
well, please don't go. There's still a lot more to do. In fact, the idea of this new type of mega party is, I think, is very encouraging. But the fact remains that we are operating within an environment from which we simply can't extricate ourselves. And that means that there are politicians in power, there are politicians who are recognized in opposition, and they're going to have to be members of that mega merger. And on a practical level, that would involve many members of the PDP, Labour, and all the rest of it. And I've read somewhere that the likes of Atiku Abubakar and Peter Obi and so on, the NNPP and so on, are all involved in it. Is that correct?
Well, let's say very clearly that they were, or they are, good human beings in these parties.
Sure.
Some of them feel trapped by the system. Some of them feel that they cannot function without the kinds of amounts of money that are required, and so they just collapse into the system. I'm an optimist in man's capacity to change himself. In fact, the only animal, the only being that has the capacity to actually redeem or change or transform themselves is the human being. And I'm sure that when you sit face to face with some of these gentlemen, they will understand that they are at a point in history where, first of all, the people have rejected them. Let them not fool themselves. People have rejected them, but they can redeem themselves in history by saying, we decided that a new way is possible and will anoint a new beginning.
But given that you have, I mean, you've been through this experience of where you're trying to find the right people, and you've given your considerable support to people like that, and you've been disappointed. I mean, you sound, you know, extremely optimistic.
You know, that's the only way to build anything, optimism. I teach entrepreneurship as one of the things that I do in life. An entrepreneur is sometimes called the itinerant tinkerer. An entrepreneur who falls and stays down is not an entrepreneur. And that's why the Japanese saying is that an entrepreneur is a man who falls down 7 times and gets up 8 times. I don't know if this is my 8th attempt to standing up, but you've got to, if you really love people, I tell people, what is leadership? Leadership is love. If you love your people, if you care about people, then you will make the sacrifice to make them take, you know, to make things happen in their
But
interest.
on a practical level, what are you encountering from some of these big name politicians?
The amazing thing is that I'm being received well across the board. And that's why I say these people love their country.
But they must be jockeying
love their
for,
children.
I mean, they are jockeying. I mean, they would want to be, you know, question of who's going to be the president. I mean, candidates and all that. These are issues.
You tell them that we are not going to begin with who is what or doing what. We are going to begin with principles. These are the principles that will ensure that our country does not become a failed state. Look, if you have been where I was in 2005, Global Thought Leaders Conference in Stockholm, Sweden. About 3-4 former European prime ministers sitting in that room. And one highly regarded person who we saw every day on TV, on CNN during one famous season of war, the Balkans, says, when I raised a couple of issues, so you know the problem with Nigeria? Nigeria has lost its strategic relevance in the world. Says, 20 years ago, no power would want to go into Africa and not pause for a second and ask, how will Nigeria react? Today, any power that wants will step into Nigeria without even giving a thought to it. I sat there and the man in me disappeared. Not that I didn't know what he was saying or I didn't realize it, but to hear it so starkly put made me want to bring all the people who've run Nigeria and give them 12 strokes of a cane in public.
Well, maybe they deserve more strokes. But clearly, what is going to impress the Nigerian people about this new mega party is if it's able to demonstrate that it can govern competently. Otherwise, people are going to say that if you can't run things well, then you're no different from anyone else in the Nigerian political establishment, and they can't trust you with power.
Absolutely.
So it's important for the public to know how you're going to deal with all those tensions.
You know, and that's why one of the big cohorts within the new tribe is the diaspora cohort. Nigerians come out of a country where nothing seems to work. They turn out to be 70% of black doctors in America, one of the finest medical systems in the world. Same Nigerians. They're corporate executives around the place. They run things so well. The problem can't be Nigerian DNA for sure. The problem is how we've structured Nigeria. Thankfully, history suggests to us, with Japan post-Meiji restoration, China rising, India rising, of a very important role of the diaspora. We must tap into talent that exists, that is Nigerian, that is all over the world, to create a new Nigeria. I believe that they are a major part of our saving ourselves. Even here in Nigeria, there are too many good people who have capacity, who have character, who have chosen to save themselves the trouble of mixing up with this thing. We can awaken commitment in them. Deliberately go out there and recruit people of integrity, of competence.
Well, to be honest,
there are many.
To be honest, Prof, it sounds like you're talking about a new political party.
That's what I'm talking
about.
Not
a merger of political
Yeah, absolutely.
parties.
That's why I say this merger thing keeps coming from the media. I'm talking about a new political party that those in the present parties would say to themselves, doesn't it make sense to become part of?
But they're not going to have the kind of, I hate that word, to use that word, structures that are going to be able to, in the current Nigerian system, because we're looking at 2027.
Structure is an invention of the politician. What is structure? What structure they have is structure of what Utomi calls criminality. Because, let's tell the truth, elections don't take place in Nigeria. It's just, you know, using this so-called structure to thwart the will of the people. What happened in 2023? Why did it, in 5 months, a ragtag army nearly run out the entire system? And we call it the obedient movement and all of that, because the people are ready, they have had enough. So P2B was just, you know, a catalyzer. The people were ready for anybody that wanted to do the right thing. And they saw in him somebody trying to preach that gospel. So the people are ready. It is because these people are ready that this structure is meaningless. And part of, and I can then bring this in, I was trying not to leave, there's structure in the labor movement, not Labour Party, in the labor movement, but that is the NLC, TUC. Why is it structure? Because they have foot soldiers everywhere. And if the interest of the working person in the country merges well with the structure of entrepreneurial people's capitalism that we're talking about. I mean, a few weeks ago, I spent some time in Taiwan, and what fascinates me the most about Taiwan, you've got 26 million people, literally, or 24 million people. Nearly 1.6 million of them are entrepreneurs. great builders who want that Nigeria with working people that the NLC, TUC, and co work for. If that interest coagulates, we've got structure.
So we're almost out of time. Unfortunately, we lost time at the beginning because we had some complications here. But let's just say that a complicated route lies ahead.
Never thought it would be easy, but the way that you take on complicated things is take steady bites, walk your talk, and ensure that people come along with you.
Right.
Why we have problems is that we don't have transparency in the system. People tell you this is what they're about, but they're lying. They have other agenda. Let's have an open agenda to rebuild Nigeria and save its people.
Well, keep us posted. And whatever comes from you is always impressive. So I appreciate your coming to talk to us about it. Professor Utomi is a professor of political economy.
And by that only no consciousness or any name. Nirapo. Edeke iso wege ya bife inurie the ballon the gentle lion who was in Nirapo. No basink tata no. Ozo the kibi abo. Kefi were equal bastama ya bife and you know who was in Nirapo. Folk would didn't open the course the kefi were equal bastama ya bife. Drop wire on the comment section below. Chitopedi Eastern News 24 kaisi when we tell you no pause ya do kempa. Dano no mun